You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad and creator who has been living in my 1997 Ford van since January 1st of 2019. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living Podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, and this week's guest is a woman who I think is fucking hilarious, and I hope y'all do too. Her name is Rania, Vania, vegan lasagna. She is BigCvntry on Instagram. She is traveling the United States with her dog, Sequoia, and I'm so excited to have her on the show because she just really keeps it real and doesn't really glamorize too much of van life. It's not all hashtag van life, hashtag blessed. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's not all bikini shots in the mountains or whatever. It's actually disgusting and hilarious a lot of the time. So thank you so much, Rania, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Good. I'm excited to have you here. So for the people who aren't following you on Instagram and don't know who you are or any of that, can you give a little bit of your backstory about how you got to where you are now?
Totally. Yeah. So I have been in the van. It'll be 2 years on Monday.
Woo!
Yeah, I know. I'm so stoked. And on the other hand, I'm not. I'm currently at a point where I am pretty burnt out on hashtag van life. So it's kind of an interesting time to have me on here. And what you said about me not glamorizing van life could not be more true right now. But I do really appreciate all it has given me. The first year and a half were just kind of magic. Except for when they were not, except for when they were in a magic show where they are trying to pretend to saw off their arm and then they do actually saw off their arm. That's what the last 6 months has kind of felt like.
Which is hilarious because you carry around a severed arm with you.
I didn't even think about that. Yes, that is totally true. Look at that. The unconscious mind is wild.
Yeah, you know what you were getting at.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna move to New York City back in March 2020, and that's literally when COVID hit.
From where?
I
where
pretty
were
quickly
you
realized, Michigan. Yeah, I had lived in Michigan my entire life up until I was 29. And I was just so ready for a change. I had spent a lot of my early adult years being just a really anxious, sad person. And I finally was at the point where I was ready to make a really big change and rely on myself and make that move. And then I realized I couldn't do that. So I was just kind of what other big life goals do I have? And since I was 16, I've always had the dream of seeing all 50 states in an RV van, whatever. So I realized okay, I can fucking do that. And I have a friend that built out a van for me within 5 months, and I hit the road. And the first several months were really tough adjusting because it was the first time I had ever been completely on my own. I had been in a long-term relationship for 10 years, jumped into another one pretty shortly after that. So it was the first time I was just completely Rania, not Rania and insert straight white man boyfriend here. So it was really liberating and really terrifying. And then I started to get the hang of it a few months in, and it has been really, really great in a lot of ways. And I definitely think I've grown the most in the last couple years than ever in my life.
Yeah, I also moved into my van when I was 29. And I had been single for a minute before I moved into the van, but it was definitely a big step in that driving away from your support system. I had lived in the Denver area for most of 7 years, and I had a bunch of friends there, and I knew my way around, and I had a little little home base. And then it's like the day I moved into the van, I started driving from Denver to Quartzsite, Arizona. And like, it was like, all right, well,
Classic van
baptism
spot.
by fire or ice is
Hmm.
really what it was. But yeah, I resonate with all of that so fucking hard.
Hmm. Yeah. It's tough, but I think that for me, jumping into the deep end was the only way I would have done it. I
Yeah.
don't know that I would have, if I had been like, let me try dabbling and do part-time weekend things, I think I would have just turned right around. And in fact, when I first got into the van, I wanted to turn around, and my best friend who I had been staying with before the van was built was like, "No, you can't. I know this is good for you. You give it until the end of the year, and if you still hate it, you can come back, but otherwise, you know, good luck staying with your parents." And I was like, I would rather be miserable in a van than be back with my parents right now. So, and I'm so grateful to him for that. And he lives in a van now too.
Yeah.
Literally, traveling with me the last 6+ months. So that has been something that has been really, really, really beautiful as well.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. I mean, you had your support system with you because thank you, technology. We have little
Hmm.
pocket computers all the time, and
Right.
our friends can be, with us in a way that they could not be, 50 years ago. Um, you mentioned not wanting to live with your folks. I know that they're not the most supportive of your lifestyle. What did they think at the beginning when you were like, well, you guys, I bought a van and my friend is converting it for me, and then I'm going to move into it? Fun.
I feel like that string of words in order to create a sentence just didn't process. Like I was speaking a different language. My parents are from Syria. They immigrated here back in the 70s. This is just something that's not done, you know? It was just like, what do you mean? What are you doing? We left Syria so you could have a great life and live in a nice house and have nice furniture and good things. The concept of moving into a tiny van and living a very basic lifestyle was very, very weird to them. Um, my mom still does not support it at all. Like whenever I visit home, that's kind of the first thing she says. In fact, for my birthday, oh, I wish I had the card on me. She said, "You know what? Let me find the card actually. I think it's pretty hilarious. One second." Okay, so it's a birthday card and Christmas themed. My birthday is October 8th, but it's Christmas themed. There are sequins on it. Not sure. Oh, it's a card she got from a Mac sample, Mac the makeup. Okay, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Nice.
Um, she said some sweet things at the top, and for background, I don't want kids, and that's been a point of contention for us as well. And again, she hates the van and is a very religious person. All right. Happy birthday to my beautiful daughter. We're starting out strong. Very sweet. I don't know how I can express my love to you. You will never truly understand how much a parent can love a daughter until you become a parent yourself. That right there, right off the bat, little comment on
Just
me
yeah,
becoming
just
a parent.
a little poke,
Uh,
a little jab.
yeah, yeah. I pray that every day God will protect you and lead you to the right path. Um, I pray to God to be with you and keep you safe and give you strength for anything in your life. May all of your wishes come true today and every day. Love, Mom. On the surface, it's really sweet, and I know it's sweet. My therapist said it was sweet, so that's how I know it's true. But I also I also know that, a lot of it is like little comments on like, I just want you to be done. And I know that because she has told me that so many times. And so I try to be patient with that because I really do understand that it doesn't make sense to them. I really do get that. But it is, like the comment of I wish for you to be happy someday is like today's that day. I know I just was talking shit about van life, but today is usually that day.
Yeah, like I'm happy
And
now. And
right.
what if my path from God, it just looks a little different than what you think my path from God is supposed to look like? So,
Right. Right.
that's a thing.
Yeah. Right. Sure. Or what if I don't really believe in God, but that's
I
a
mean,
totally different conversation I
that's
have
a
not had with them.
that's yeah. It sounds like maybe that's a conversation you can table as long as possible.
Yeah, I would like to just throw that table into a fire. I don't want to deal with that ever.
So your first few months in the van were really friggin' hard because you were adjusting to living in a very tiny mobile space and being on your
Hmm.
own for the first time in a while. You didn't necessarily have the support of your parents, but you had the support of your best friend who sounds like an amazing human being. And every time you guys like
He's the best.
post about each other on Instagram, it's like, oh, that's really cute. I want one. um, was there like a turning point, like one moment you can think of where it was like, oh, this is easier now, or oh, this is the right
Hmm.
path for me, or was it just kind of like a blending of like this is hard and now it's kind of easy? Like, was there a moment,
Yeah.
or was it holistic?
That's a really good question. I would say it was a pretty slow burn, and the crux of it was people, which was really
Mm.
interesting because I didn't go into van life looking for community, looking for friends. I really was looking at it as more of like, I want to spend a ton of time alone looking inward. And I realized I got to that point. But yeah, I really thought it was going to be like a lot of time for self-reflection. And then I realized like this is a scary place to be. I want to be here, but not all the time. It's exhausting. Um, so the first time I made van friends was when my Maxer fan broke down for like the first time out of five more times. And I went up to a group of youths. They looked like they were around my age, and was like, "Hey, can do any of you have one of these? Can you help?" And then it just like morphed into us hanging out for the next few days and realizing like, oh my God, band people are awesome. Like it's not just I just didn't think was going to fit in. I thought it was going to be a certain type of person that I wouldn't necessarily consider myself to be. I thought it was going to be the people you see on Instagram. And even those people
Yeah.
are great in their own way and you have a ton in common. Like at the end of the day, anyone who lives in a van, you have a really important baseline thing in common, which is that you want to live differently from traditional society. And so I kind of realized like, oh, it's actually really easy to connect with people and there is a huge variety out there. And so over time, more and more, I started to just meet people who made me feel great. And then I started to feel better about myself. I started to spend, once I had spent a few months on my own, I realized like I'm doing this. I can make it. I can rely on myself. And it was just such an amazing feeling to be at that point because that was the primary reason why I ventured into doing this was to figure out how to be self-reliant. I mean, like when something breaks down, I still call my builder basically on the verge of tears, but like I
Sure.
fix it with my hands, you know? Um, and so it's just, yeah, it really gave me a ton in that sense.
Yeah. I think for me that was also kind of the same. The best thing I got out of living out of my van was like an overarching sense of like capability. Like I
Yeah.
can do this. I can take care of myself. I can like shit breaks. I might get stressed out. I'll probably cry. I might call somebody who I think knows more
Hmm.
than I do, but ultimately like
Hmm.
I can handle it. It's going to be fine. And like that
Absolutely.
is something that people
Yeah.
can't take away from you and it feels incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. There's totally a like freedom and liberation to that. And it's just really cool to realize the resiliency that humans can have and has made me feel like there are other dreams that I have in my life and I think I can try to pursue them. I think I know the world will not end.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That gives me all the warm fuzzies. So, logistically, how are you making this happen? When you moved into the van, did you have a bunch of money saved up and you're like, I'm just going to live off my savings for a while? Or were you one of those people who was able to take your work on the road because of the pandemic? Or were you already working for yourself from home? How are you
Mhm.
financially making this happen?
So this is just really exciting because you're talking to me during a very exciting transition period. I have had the same job for the last 4.5 years, And I had pre-COVID, it was already remote. The flexibility is amazing, all of that. So I told my boss I wanted to do this, and he was awesome and was like, "Yeah, go for it." Um, and so I've been able to support myself from that. But I just quit 2 days ago, and I am so stoked. Like
Woo!
I love them. They're great. It's an animal rights nonprofit. I love what they do. I was just not being my best self there after a certain point, and it had been in the back of my mind for a while.
Mhm.
um there are like a couple of things potentially in the works for how to make money going forward. I would love to say I have money saved, but I don't really. But I kind of thrive in, I'm a procrastinator, and so like I kind of, I'll figure some shit out. I don't know. But yeah, yeah, I've been able to work remotely. It had during up until Starling, which obviously so many van lifers are getting now,
Yeah.
game changer. For the most part, though, it has been really easy. I've definitely struggled with being in certain places without service, and being a bummer. Like in Baja, for example, we'd be at a
Yeah.
beautiful beach campsite, and then it would be like, back to the old grind, and then have to leave to go find a city to go work in. And at the end of the day, though, that is fine because having a job has allowed me the freedom to do a lot of really cool things as well. I have so much admiration for people who jump into a van and don't have like a constant source of income lined up. But for me, that just seemed like I'm already a person full of constant anxiety and dread. I don't need to add another variable to the equation.
Yeah. I think that's really cool that you were already working a job that was remote, and then your boss was
Hmm.
like, cool, as long as you get your work done, like we don't care where
Hmm.
you are. We don't care if you're in a house or if
Yeah,
you're in a van or whatever.
right.
So many jobs don't need to be done from an office, and I think that is one of the best things that came out of the pandemic. Not that the pandemic is over.
100%.
Um, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think so many people and employers, more people than employers, but our people are realizing like, oh, actually people are like happier and more productive and we have less
Yeah.
overhead. How interesting. Let's like let people live their
Yeah.
own lives. So strange.
Hmm. It's so wild to me that it wasn't a thing that was common pre-pandemic. It's really wild to me too that I do have some van friends who do have to lie to their employers about living in a van. They always do the green screen background, and like are super cautious about making sure they have service. That's pretty few and far between, but I know a few people, and to me it's just crazy because it's like I see these friends and I see how hard they work. They're getting
Yeah.
their shit done. They're getting their shit done more than I did when I lived in an apartment. And yeah, so I'm very grateful to have an employer that was okay with it. Well, is okay with it. Um, but I'm not gonna have to say that sentence starting in 3 weeks because I'm quitting.
Woo woo. That is
Mhm.
awesome. You gave them a 3 week notice. That's very generous.
Yeah, I was a little bit selfish. It was also just like I want to work up until the next pay period and make that cash.
Fair. I mean, I'm not gonna argue with that.
Yeah.
So, you were gonna move to New York, and then the pandemic happened, and you were like, "All right, I need something else to do. I'm in the mood for a big life change. What's another
Yeah.
goal? Another goal is to see all 50 states. It's been 2 years. Have you
Mhm.
seen all 50 states? How did you go about that? Was there a plan, or were you just like, you know what, the weather here is good. Let's go there and explore that part of the country. How did you decide where to go? Where have you been? Did you accomplish that goal?
I have not accomplished the goal yet. Right now I'm in the Northeast, which there are a huge chunk of states that I haven't seen out
They're
here
very
yet.
small. They're very small over
Um,
there.
They're very small, so it's nice. I can
Yeah.
check those off the list pretty easily. But yeah, I still have like three. I'm looking at my map, my scratch off map, which is like the most satisfying thing to scratch off whenever you go to a new
Friggin'
state.
believe it.
Um, yeah, there are still three more out here that I need to do, and then the boring, no offense, flyover states like Missouri and Oklahoma and all of that. Um, and then Hawaii, which I would love to make happen when it's like the right time. I'm not in a huge rush to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that's not something that can happen in the van anyway. But yeah, in terms of like where I wanted to go, I literally had no plan. I just had an initial first stop that I knew I wanted to do, which was Zion National Park. Um, when I was first in the van, like I had mentioned, was just so full of anxiety, like the type of anxiety where you wake up and before your eyes are even open, your like heart is racing.
Mm-hmm.
So the only time I really felt good was when I was driving. That just felt like really freeing, and like all I had to think about was the road ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went from Michigan to Zion within like, I don't know, a week and a half with a ton of stops along the way. Um, but yeah, I would just drive for hours that night. So yeah, once I hit Zion, I was just kind of like, yeah, I want to chase the good weather and do a lot of the Southwest, which I did. And uh, this past winter, I did Baja, which was amazing. I did that with a group of 5 other awesome solo female van lifers. And then this summer, I did Alaska with another group of really cool friends and my best friend, Matthew. And so that was really cool to check that off the list because Alaska seemed like the least realistic place for me to get it done within this year, and it happened. Um, but yeah, so I just have like I think 7 more states that I need to get done. Um, and even that sentence that I need to get done, I don't really like saying because like I want
Yeah.
to appreciate them. This is a I'm at the point where it's like I don't want to just zoom through it just to say I've zoomed through it. I want to appreciate them. So,
Yeah. And this time of year is a great time of year to be in the Northeast because the colors have got
mhm,
to be popping off.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, they are popping off hard. They're definitely not mid.
No, not mid.
Not
um
mid. I think
did,
I used that correctly. I'm not sure.
and I don't, I'm not hip. I don't know. I would
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody will hear it and will tell us in the
Mhm,
comments.
mhm. Okay.
Did you have Sequoia before you moved into the van, or was she an addition after you had already been living in it? And what is your experience living with a big dog in a small space?
I have had Sequoia since she was a pup, since she was 10 weeks old. And it was definitely tricky moving into the van with her. Long story short, Sequoia and another dog who has passed since I've been in the van. Um, I had shared them with my ex-boyfriend, the one who I had been with for 10 years. And getting him to agree to let me take Sequoia into the van and, permanently, not semi-permanently have her away from him was a really big challenge.
Mm.
But we ended up compromising and agreeing that that was okay to do. Um, and I was just super nervous about it because she's an old lady. She was 9 or 10 at the time, I think 10. So I was just like terrified that she would hate it and I was gonna have to like scrap the whole
Mm.
plan.
Yep.
But it is adorable. She loves it so much. Like she has her special spot in the passenger seat. I literally can never have a guest sit in the passenger seat.
Oh
Like
no.
she will, yeah, she will like I've tried blocking her. She'll jump over the barricade. She will sit on your lap and like look annoyed with you for taking her space.
Yeah.
Um, I've been
Lisa and
like
Sequoia have
at
a
people's
lot in
houses and
common.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, they're just like, yeah, so stubborn and they know what they want, which I is one of my favorite things about her, but it can be frustrating. But yeah, it's just really cute. Like we'll be at a friend's house or something like that, and she'll just be like sitting by the van, like let me into my house. So she loves it. She's a total road pup. Like I'd mentioned, I'm sort of starting to get to the point where I'm feeling like ready to maybe settle into one place within the next year, and I really hope she doesn't hate me for it. We'll see.
Yeah. I had a very, very similar concern and experience with Lisa, who is right behind me if you're watching the YouTube version of this.
How
She
old is
was,
she?
well, when we moved into the van, she was probably about 10.
Old
Um,
gal. Yeah.
yeah, so about the same. And I, at first, when I first bought the van, and I was like converting it, tearing it apart, and putting it back together. It never occurred to me that she wouldn't love it. I was just like, oh, she's gonna fucking love it. Like,
Yeah.
of course. Like she loves camping and road trips and being with me, and like this is all of that. And
Hmm.
then I like watched a really bad documentary, and it introduced the idea that maybe this dog would not uh
Mm.
acclimate well to van life because they don't all do that. So then
Right.
when we first moved into the van, I just like kept it like an eye on her like a hawk, like the whole time. Like, are you okay? Are you stressed? Are you happy? Are you
Yeah.
dying? What is happening? Are you okay? And like she's
Right.
fucking fine. She acclimated to it like immediately and
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. And then when we moved into the stationary house, she was a little weird, at first. And
Really.
she doesn't, yeah, she was just kind of like, all right, are we just like staying here or like what?
Hmm.
And she's always gotten nervous when I take her to new places, like I'm gonna leave her behind.
Oh,
So
yeah. I
we
would say
come
same
into
for
this new,
Sequoia.
yeah. And I've had her since she was like, 6 weeks old. Like she's a bag of bones, like the ittiest bittiest little thing. And obviously she has acclimated to house life just fine.
Yeah,
And
she looks so cozy. I
she
wish I
is
were in
very
her position
cozy.
right now.
But in
Yeah.
the van, like she passenger seat, all hers, nobody else's. And if somebody else ever sat there, she would just sit on them. And
Hmm.
she's super stubborn and she can be vocal about like what she wants. She's not really a loud dog, but when she wants something, like she knows how to use
Yes.
her voice.
Yes. Exactly. I think Sequoia and her would be like, I don't know that they would be pals. I
No.
feel like they would just both be like old ladies sitting next to each other on the porch, just kind of like minding their
Yeah.
own business together but separate.
Yeah, kind of like, all right, if we need to, like we can be a pack and like eat something, like really gang up on something that isn't
Yes.
suspecting. But otherwise, like
Yeah.
I don't want to play with you. I don't want to like do
Hmm.
anything cutesy. Like I have my space, you have your
Yeah.
space, whatever.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. We can
But
share a
yeah.
meal of delicious crumbs that somebody left at the campsite. Yeah.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
just share that space together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a minute to talk about the sponsor for this episode. That is the app Rerouted. With Rerouted, you can buy, sell, and donate used outdoor gear online instantly and automatically. As soon as it sells, you just print out a shipping label and you pop it in the mail. There's no hassle. You never have to deal with any strangers. It's a pretty painless process. One of the reasons I love Rerouted so much is because they are committed to access, sustainability, and affordability for all users. They're really into the circular economy and keeping things out of landfills, and that is just something I really enjoy. And so if you want to try Rerouted for the first time, you can get 10% off of your first purchase with them with the link that is in the description below. And then also, if you are clearing out your closet and making some more space for some new gear, get in touch with me and I can put you in touch with their wizard so that you can list your first 5 items for free on their site. Again, that is Rerouted. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show, and let's get back to our chit chat. So you said that sometime in the next year, maybe you might want to be getting a little bit more stationary. Do you have an
Hmm.
idea of where you might want to be or what that looks like or how you will know when you land somewhere? Because I just got stationary within the last year. And so I went through the exact same thing. I wasn't expecting to, but
Yeah.
my process was very organic. I didn't really have a ton of control over it at first.
I'm curious how that transition has been for you. Sorry, I know this is your show and I'm just hijacking
Oh,
it,
that's
but
fine.
as someone who wants to do this as well eventually, like, what was that like for you? When did you know? I'm just asking you this exact same questions you just asked me, but you're someone who has actually done it. And like, how has it been being in a house and adjusting to that? Because I do have a fear of moving in somewhere and then being like, oh my God, I'm so bored.
Yep. I had a lot of those same fears. So I am in Bisbee, Arizona, super, super southeast part of the state. It's an area that I had visited multiple times in the van before. I decided to live here. And it's a really cool town, and every time I went through, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, this is cool. I'll come back, but like, I'm not going to stay here. Um, I kind of knew when I moved into the van and when I started doing like all of the traveling and all of the vanning, like I'll find a place somewhere that will suit me and will be good enough and I will stop and I will just know when it's time to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then my first year in the van I did like a pretty big tour of the western states and I did a ton of driving and I was always going new places and small towns, and a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of them were like really cute and cool and like, oh, this is fun, but none of them were like, hey, you should stay here. They were all like, all right,
Sure.
cool. Like after a week max I'd be like, fuck, I gotta leave,
Ready to go.
gotta
Yeah,
fucking
yeah,
go. um and
yeah.
then and then I kind of had like an idea of where I wanted to be. Like I'm kind of like a mountain person, 4 season person.
Mm-hmm.
I like grass on the ground and like trees with leaves on them and like 4 whole seasons.
Totally.
And so I thought that I would land somewhere like Colorado, Montana, Idaho, pieces of like Oregon or Washington. And that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of where I thought I would be. So I spent a lot of time in those states exploring them. And there are parts of all of them that I love, but none of
Yeah.
them were like, hey, you should just stay here. Um, and then when I came to Bisbee last year, right around this time, for the third or fourth or fifth time, um
Mm-hmm.
like something just totally switched in my gut, and I don't like, it was fully my gut's decision. She was like, oh, this is home, we belong here, we're staying here. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 we're not. Because
Yeah.
this doesn't have 4 seasons, this doesn't have big
Yeah.
mountains. Like we're at like 5,000 feet, so like we're not as deserty as some of the desert around us.
Right.
um but I didn't believe it, so I like left and came back
Mm-hmm.
like over and over and over again, and my gut never changed
Mm-hmm.
her mind. She was still like, nope, this is home, make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
The
how I knew.
the gut is a wise yet often cruel mistress. It
Very,
truly is.
both of those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Um,
So it's not like I don't have like a, this is how I knew, and I had my
yeah.
little like my matrix with my check boxes and a place has to
Right.
be all these things. For me it was mostly just like it was a vibe check.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like practical things I could say about why I like living here.
Mm.
Namely, it's very affordable. And it's like a small town and it's a very artsy community and everybody is very
So cute. I
welcoming
love
and
it there.
accepting. And yeah, if y'all haven't been, would definitely recommend coming. I think
Hmm.
earlier this year, I think in March, there was a van gathering. I think they're going to keep doing that, called Weird Wild West, put on
Mm.
by Journal of Lost Time.
Journal
This
of
is
Lost Time. Yeah.
clearly not sponsored. Could be though. If they want to sponsor me, they should reach out. Just
Hmm.
send me
Right
DM.
here. She's right here, you
Right.
guys, just waiting.
I'm literally here.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it. I guess, does that answer your questions about, I was really worried that like I would get into a house and I'd be like, I hate it. This is terrible. Get me out
Yeah.
of here. Get me back in the van. Um, and I did the same thing with the van. When I moved into the van, I was like, what, everybody asked me when I was building it out, what if you move into the van and you hate it? And I was like, well, then I'll
Hmm.
just move out of the van. Like it's not that
Right.
hard. So when I moved into the house, it was like, well, I'm never going to get rid of the van because eventually I will
Hmm.
get restless. I need to go
Yeah.
places. I need change. I need novelty. So if I hate living in the
Hmm.
house, I'll just move back into the van.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an end all be all.
No, it's not a commitment. I have never viewed like even lease agreements as a commitment or mortgages as a commitment. It's more just like a
Yeah.
suggestion, like, cool,
Suggestion.
but I'm still gonna do what I want
Yeah,
to
totally. Yeah, I love that. Having a van while I make my next move, whatever that may be, is definitely a goal of mine. I would love to be able to have that option still.
do. Hmm.
As of right now, I think my next move is to move to New York, do the thing that I wanted
Do
to
the thing.
do a couple of years ago. And I will most likely sell the van because money.
Mm.
But we'll see. I mean, and also where would I store it in New York City, all of that, blah blah blah.
Parking.
Uh
Ugh.
yeah, exactly. I'll be going to New York around this time next week, in the van,
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
really excited to see how that goes. Um, and I want to just sort of feel out different neighborhoods and feel like, is this still the thing that I want to do? Honestly, it's the idea of New York actually terrifies me right now more than being in the van. Like, there are a lot of things that I want to try to get into, and the reason why I would want to move there is to pursue another dream of mine. Um, and it's just so scary to me. And my best friend Matthew, who I know I've mentioned a lot, has said like if it's scary, that's why you need to do it. So same thing with this,
Yeah.
and I am so happy that I did it. So I know it's what I should do. I'm just well, it's wild that being in a van is my comfort zone now.
I think that's so sweet.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think that putting yourself in New York and having that vibe check is really important. That's like the number one
Yeah.
piece of advice I give to people when they're looking for vans to buy and they're like, "Oh, what's the best kind of van?" And I'm like, "Okay, there's no such thing." But what you should
Yeah.
do is test drive all of them. Put your body in the space
Hmm.
where you think you want your body to live and like see how it
Hmm.
feels, see how you move, see how all the things. And like the same is true for stationary places. Like I've been
Absolutely.
in Bisbee and I knew that Bisbee was great, but the vibe this time just like sucked me in and kept me here. But like I went
Hmm.
to a bunch of other places that I thought like, oh, this small town in Montana is going to be perfect for me. I have friends who live there already. Like I enjoy visiting. Like I'm going to go and I'm going to stay for a little longer and see how it feels. And like it felt like I had to leave after a week.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
like you just have to like try it. It's not nothing is a
right.
commitment. Not, I mean,
Exactly.
there's very okay, not nothing. There are very few things that are a commitment. Not
Right.
nothing, but like most things that we think are like, what are you gonna do if you move into the van and you hate it? Then I'm just gonna move out. Like it's not a I'm not signing my
Uh-huh.
life away, or even
Right.
like if you sign a lease or like you get a mortgage or you buy a house or like whatever, you're not signing your life away. Like truly, it's like not a thing.
Unless you're a strictly Catholic woman in the 1700s,
Mm,
married to a powerful man, nothing has to be a pure commitment. I totally agree.
yeah. So one of the things that I absolutely adore about you and your feed and everything that you post is how authentic you are, but also you're fucking hilarious.
Thank you.
Is this like just have you always been funny? Is this something that you have been developing? Are you like, did the van make you funny? Like what, why are you like this? I
Why
love it.
am I?
Why are you like
Amazing
this? I
question.
I think you're hilarious. What made you decide to carry around a severed arm with you and like take those cutesy couple photos that people take, but it's like
Hmm.
a severed arm? Tell me, like
Um,
your sense of humor is amazing.
I really appreciate that. So, actually, I think the other thing that finally started to make me feel like myself and make me like happy with who I was as a person was back around, I guess it would be like 5 years ago now. I got into improv
Yeah.
back in the Metro Detroit area, and the it was just the best thing I could have done for myself around that time. I was in the middle of getting my master of social work, which like I knew in the moment wasn't the right move for me. I was just not a happy person, was, in a relationship that was kind of codependent and I knew wasn't what was best for me. And so getting into that improv world, like, I was just like, "Oh my god, people like this particular style of humor I have, and there are other weirdos like me." And it's just a really awesome community. Like, I would say there's a pretty solid parallel between the van life community and being able to find your people in that, and then like the improv nerd community. Um, so I started doing that, and then I started doing like sketch comedy, doing writing, and so my dream with moving to New York City is I want to be a TV writer. And so like all of that has led up to where I want to find myself one day in the near future if possible. So yeah, it's just like I realized, you know, I this is where I have the most fun and I'm able to connect with people. I think that humor started out of a place of insecurity. Like, I think that humor was like, if I can make someone laugh, they like me in this 10-second moment.
Yeah.
Like it was a lot, it was actually like very social anxiety based. And probably still is, honestly, but it was a really good way to connect with people for me and still is. Um, I think that it's just something that is really important to me in life. And I don't know that that will really change ever. And then in terms of the severed arm thing, that has been really interesting lately too, because I'm in another transition period in life. So the severed arm thing is to, parody those couple photos where it's, the woman holding their boyfriend's hand and looking back at him romantically. And I didn't go into the van with a boyfriend. Oh, it was very intentional to not go in with a partner.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like, I want to make fun of this. And also, I'm like so bad at posing and being a like cute influencer. So it was like, here is something I feel comfortable doing. But it has been pretty funny because I recently started seeing someone, which was its own whole thing because, like I said, the whole point of getting into the van was to be self-reliant. I don't need no man, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so whenever I do take those pictures now, I'm like, am I a fraud? I don't know. But it really has been really interesting to realize like how can I be self-reliant and also like let someone into my life in a very deep way.
Yeah.
It's been a battle. I've put the poor guy through the ringer a couple of times with like these existential crises. And I'm just like learning like it's okay. I did almost 2 full years alone. I wouldn't say completed what I meant to set out to do. I think that's a lifelong process, honestly. But I've done a lot of work.
I went through a very similar experience. I was single
Dang,
for a few
Holly, we have
years.
so much in common.
We have so much in common.
It's great.
I was single for a few years before I moved into the van. And then I moved into the van and was very decidedly like, I don't want to do this with anybody else. I want to do this by myself.
Mm.
I did it by myself
Yeah.
and I got that whole like solo female van life identity. And then my second year in the van, I met a guy and he was great and we became a couple and he had his own van, thank God.
Mhm.
But like through the first maybe 6 months to a year of our relationship, I had a bunch of like those existential like
Yeah.
identity shifts. Who am I? Like I am a solo
Hmm.
female who don't need no man,
Right.
and now I have one.
Right.
And like, am I a fraud? Like, am I
Who
not
am
who I
I?
said I was? Who am I now?
Yeah.
Um, I think that I mean, you were in one very long relationship and then a short one and then single and then the van and now you're in another one. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. I was a serial monogamous, so I was in like
Hmm.
1 and 2 year relationships back to back to back to back to back. And
Sure.
then I was
Yeah.
single for a few years and then I had a boyfriend for like a year and a half or so and now I've been single again for over a year. And I honestly
Mhm.
truly think that the single times is where you get all the growth. Maybe not all, not
Yeah.
everybody's life is going to be like this. I don't want people listening who are in serious relationships to be like, I'm missing out on my life. She's telling me I'm incomplete.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that for
Right.
me and Rania, evidently, the single times have really like helped us figure out. I'm putting words in your mouth. Help me figure out
No, for
like
sure.
who I am more.
Absolutely.
Um, and that makes me a better partner knowing
Hmm.
more who I am individually, but then figuring out how to be who you are in an interdependent kind of relationship
Yeah.
is so hard. It's
It's
so
so,
hard. That
so
needs to be
difficult.
like its own fucking podcast episode where it's like, how do you be single? Got it. How do you be in a relationship? Someone else has got it. How do you do the in between? Like it's
Yeah.
hard to go
It's
from
really
like
hard.
independent to uh not codependent. Not codependent isn't bad, but like just interdependent.
Mhm.
And like, that's so interesting. And I totally know what you're talking about when you're like
Yeah.
feeling all the feels about who am I?
So many feelings. Right. It's funny that you use the word interdependent because I literally just used that word yesterday, or I'm sorry, learned that word yesterday. Um, I love reframing things like that
Mhm.
and thinking about it in that way, of thinking of interdependency as a positive thing. Completely agree that so much growth happens when you're on your own. I do also think that there is a lot of growth that can happen within a relationship, especially in terms of figuring out how you interact in a close partnership. And so I have really enjoyed that, but I was starting to feel like, is this codependency? Is this me just like losing my identity?
Yeah.
And then, like sitting and thinking about like, no, this person wants me to be better and like wants me to grow and still try to achieve my dreams. I think a healthy relationship can help you with all of those things. And I sort of had felt too like in my singledom, I was still growing, certainly, but I was like, I kind of hit a wall where it was like,
Yeah.
okay, I know this about myself and this, and I'm just like kind of bored of looking at this beautiful overlook by myself. Sequoia doesn't seem to give a fuck. Like,
Yeah.
I want
Lisa
to share
doesn't
this
give a
with
fuck.
someone. But yeah. Do you even know how lucky you are? I sound like my mom now. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that on so many levels, all of the levels.
Mhm.
I do believe that interdependence in general, um, this is something I've been thinking about for the last few years because like I can be hyper independent, which is a trauma response. Sure, whatever, fine.
Mhm.
But people, especially in our culture right now, are like pretty enamored with that, like they like the idea of like a strong independent person who's like handling shit on their own. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, especially, they like the idea of a strong independent woman, and then they meet the woman and then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, no, 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 I don't like this. um
Yeah.
but I think like our culture kind of romanticizes like hyper independence, which is actually like an avoidant attachment style, which is not very healthy and good
Totally.
and makes people sad.
Mhm.
But I do believe that like interdependence can make you better than the sum of the parts. It's kind of like a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of situation. You can
Yeah.
be more with the help of somebody else. And it doesn't have to be a romantic partner. It could be like a friend or a coworker or something of that nature as well. If you haven't read it, highly recommend 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Ugh. I thought
It's
you were
so
gonna
good.
say this book, and I was
Oh,
like, yes, Holly,
I'm
another thing.
I'm
This book
also
is so
reading
good.
that book. It's on my bed right behind me right now.
That's so fun. Are you kidding me?
We're the same.
Ugh,
We're just the
Holly,
same
why
person.
did we not become friends sooner? What a waste. What a waste.
Why haven't our vans crossed paths? Ugh,
I
you
know.
got to come back
I
to
know.
Bisbee before you settle
I would
full
love
time
to.
in New York. But
Yeah,
yeah.
down. Instantly down. Yeah, and
um,
I think that's such a good point too about like being hyper independent. That can be a trauma response, and not being able to ask for help from others can really set you back in life. Um,
yeah.
it's not healthy. I mean, any extreme is not healthy. And I totally agree. Like I was starting to go down that route of like, I don't need anyone. And creating really strong friendships and like growing the ones that I already had are what have given me a ton of joy. So like that's not what I wanted as much as I thought that's what I should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And I think that this definitely deserves its own podcast episode. So if the listeners want to hear more about, I guess, this aspect of relationships, how to be in one after you haven't been in one in a while, how to approach them in a healthy way, like would love to spend an entire episode talking about that. The relationship episodes that I do, like we talked about relationship anarchy on one, we talked about
Mm.
like polyamory and ethical non-monogamy on one, and like I've had a couple of podcast episodes that like talk specifically about like different relationship dynamics or topics or subjects, and they always seem to get like the most interest. So maybe I need to be talking about that a little bit more, because it is
Yeah.
fascinating, and it's something that like most people are in or want to be in, or
Mhm.
something. So I think that that is something that we should definitely keep talking about. um
And you have a really interesting perspective, having done the whole single thing and then dating someone who was also in a van, which that was my goal. I was like, the only way I could see myself dating someone is if they had their own van, and I'm
mhm.
dating someone who is not in a van at all, but is like semi on the road because of his job. So it works out in its own way. But he's actually flying out tomorrow, and we're gonna spend like the next 2 weeks together in my van, and
Fun.
that is what made me spiral. Fun, yeah, yeah, I'm excited.
A
But
little
it also made
scary
me
though,
spiral
yeah.
into the whole, yeah, exactly. So but yeah, I would love if you have a podcast episode about that. I would love to listen to it, because there's just it's there's no template for van life in general, and then relationships within van life as well.
Absolutely not. Oh my goodness. But I think that if you're choosing to live in a van anyway, as you said earlier, then you are automatically looking for some kind of alternative lifestyle. You want to have something be
Hmm.
done differently. And so I think that many, not all, van people are more interested in creating relationships that work for them uniquely, rather
Hmm.
than the kind of toxic monogamy version that a lot of us have, especially growing up like hyper religious or something like that. I think that that kind of relationship can work for some people, but I don't think it works for
Yeah.
people as much as we think it does. Just like the lifestyle of modern, you know, late stage capitalism doesn't actually work for people,
Hmm.
but we don't know another way, which is the whole point of the
Right.
show, is to share all the other ways you can live. And so I think that,
Love it.
especially in the van community or other alternative lifestyle type communities, it's kind of like a holistic thing. It's like it's a little bit dominoes. Like you can change your domicile from big to small, from stationary to mobile, and then from there it's like, oh well, why don't I just change this other thing, and like why don't I just
Yeah.
believe this other thing, and why don't I live this other way? And then it just kind of, it's like a trickle effect. It really opens your eyes to like more ways of like doing life, and I love it.
That's such a good point. I haven't thought about it like that, but that's totally true. It's like, as much as it has helped me grow personally on like a self level, it has opened up my mind to like a ton of different ways of living and like worldviews. So yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Thank you. Thank you. What would you say to the you of 3 or 4 years ago, or to somebody today? I mean, 3 or 4 years ago is kind of hard to like relate to because we have a pandemic, but maybe to the people of today who know like there's like a nagging sensation that something needs to change, but they
Hmm.
don't know what, or maybe they know exactly what, but they're afraid because they don't have the support of the
Hmm.
people around them, or they just don't know how to do it. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who was like that?
I mean, I know it's cliche, but the advice is simply just do it. Nike, they got something right. Um, is that Nike? I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's Nike.
Um, I think
Mhm.
so. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, I really strongly believe that discomfort is where the growth comes from.
Mm,
And, as much as I've kind of talked about how not excited I am currently in this phase of van life, and how I've just been really like uncomfortable physically lately with living in a van. I do have to remind myself like this is where the growth is, because that's where it was when I was waking up having a panic attack basically every morning. Like it just happened in such a concentrated amount of time. So comfort is great, but that's not where change usually happens. So if you're at a point in your life where you're ready for change, you're ready to figure out who you are, like you have to throw yourself into the deep end. Um, and it's hard and it's really scary, but it I think the thing that I had to remind myself within those first few months living in the van was like it's going to be worth it in the end. And I was right. It was totally worth it in the end. It's
yeah.
like going to the gym which sucks. I'm literally in a Planet Fitness parking lot, like in the back of my mind right now, like, should I skip my workout today? I am going to. Um, but like, it's just like you do it because you know you're gonna get those gains.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different kind of gains, but
Yeah.
just as valuable, probably more valuable.
Mhm.
Yeah. Rania, how can people come find you on the interwebs if they want to keep up with you and your adventures and see how fucking funny you are?
Thank you. My Instagram is BigCvntry, BigCvntry. Instagram blocked it from being
Sure.
CUNT,
I'm sure they did.
which is so silly because I think you can have handles with the word dick and like penis in them, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so BigCvntry. I haven't been using social media a ton lately because I've just been trying to live in the present. And I want to get back into it for sure. I mean, who cares? It also doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's pretty much the best way to find me.
Cool. And I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for being here and being a part of the show. I have really enjoyed this. Like, I knew that we would get along. I knew
Mhm.
that we had things in common. I didn't realize exactly how friggin' much we have in common. And thank you to everybody who's listening or watching. If you've made it this far in the episode, you have made it to the end, and that means you probably liked it. So if you could go ahead and give it a thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever it is on the platform that you're consuming it on, that would be awesome. If you know somebody, maybe, a single female who needs to make a big change in her life, send her this episode. If you want some laughs, go follow Rania. And I hope you guys tune in next time. These are not weekly at the moment. Next time for another excellent episode. And again,
I
thank
can
you so much
relate
for
to that
being,
too.
yeah, yeah, it was weekly for over 2 years, and now it's just kind of like I gotta take my foot off the gas, which is fine. There's over 100 episodes, 120 some odd
Wow,
episodes for people to listen
that's
to,
awesome.
if this happens to be their first one. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Rania, and I will